How do I break my lease early?
That's a great question. I think the important thing, and that happens. I think one of the things you're asking about is like, look, life happens. I make commitments, and sometimes things happen, and I have to get out of them for whatever reason. How do I do that? And I think it's acknowledging that first you're in a commitment when you sign a lease with a landlord. The landlord and tenant are committed to each other for this arrangement under this contract, and the landlord has to abide by the lease and the tenant has to abide by the lease for the length of time that it is. So let's say for some reason you sign a lease and, and you're in like 6 months in, and then all of a sudden a great thing happens. You get an amazing job offer in a new city and you sort of have to get out of the lease and you're like, what do you do because you have 6 months left, right?
Mm-hmm.
So practically, you can't get out of the lease unless the lease provides for that. So a good tip is to negotiate that up front and say, listen, what if I have to break my lease? If you sort of now that this question, it's probably a good idea to include some provision for getting out of your lease in the lease before you sign it, right? But let's say you're in a situation where for some reason you have 6 months of your lease left, and you have to move. So I think when you're approaching your landlord for such a question, first of all, I think it's important to approach a landlord instead of just not handling it that way, right? Always best to make a phone call and have a discussion about this situation. And whenever you want to produce a good outcome for yourself, it's important to think about what you can offer the landlord when you're making a reasonable request or an offer. So and I often distinguish this, Melissa, when you're saying, when I need something from my landlord or I want something, it's fine. You'll always get more if you offer something in return. So we could practice that, right? You say, first thing you'll do is just make a request. You call the landlord, I need to leave. Can you let me out of my lease?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Why should I do that?
why should the landlord do that? Well, now you tell the landlord, I have a situation. I got a job offer. Very happy for you, but the landlord's in a bad spot,
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now you got to think of what can you offer the tenants? What can you offer the landlord that will help him or her? Okay. So say, listen, I would like to break my lease. Giving the landlord enough time is important. So I'd like to give you enough time